tape. So you have no trouble with twisted traces, and the fish, after it's picked up the bait, can run with the bait, and then when the clip strikes the crimp, that sets the hook into the fish.
Because of the difficult conditions on the west coast today, we will run only 10 hooks. Elsewhere, we would run the full 20 hooks this rig can deploy. The deluxe dropper is supplied with two 10-hook sections. Each has 18 crimps attached between the two three-way swivels. After each trace is clipped on, 2 crimps are allowed to pass before the next trace is clipped on. This ensures the traces can't touch each other or become tangled. A total of 9 traces are fitted between the two three-way swivels.
Okay, and then when you come to the other end of the line, you've got another three-way swivel. You clip the back weight on the same as you did the front one. Let it go a little more, and then you come to a clip. And that clip is where you clip your last trace on before you let your line go. If you're going to put a bigger bait on, this is the place to put it, or if you want a really big hook. Frequently the biggest fish of the day will be taken on that, and if the biggest fish of the day happens to be a shark, then you're just going to lose your back hook and nothing else.
That's everything connected. Now all we have to do is let it run out. The kite is way out over the water at this stage, and it easily pulls out the bottle, followed by the baits and traces. Now we're starting to get into the actual fishing.
Okay, and now all that we have to do is just keep a slight pressure on the side of the reels to make sure that the line keeps supported clear of the water, and that prevents any chance of the hook section getting caught in the main line. Once the hooks are about 300 metres out, there's actually no chance of that sort of tangle. So if there's no boats in the area or no snags, you can actually let it drop into the water. It's very important with all types of kite fishing to keep the gear moving, particularly in the first 300 metres, because that's where the paddle crabs live. If your gear stops in that zone, the crabs will all bury themselves in the sand while they're hanging onto your bait, and then the next gust of wind, all your baits will be pulled off.
Okay, now we've got the line out and set, and like all fishing, it's just a question of waiting. But with kite fishing, you must keep an eye on the gear. You don't want a boat or a car on the beach running over your line. On the east coast, we leave the gear out for an hour or more, but on the west coast, you'll catch fish in as little as 10 to 15 minutes. But it's a good idea to keep your first set a short one, and if you get a 50% or better catch, do the same again. When the fishing is hot on the west coast, sharks can be a real problem if you leave the gear out for too long. This kahawai has just been attacked by a shark, but sometimes it works the other way round, and you catch the shark. Like this bronze whaler that was hooked on the same day. The Paul's Fishing Kite's deluxe dropper rig that we've just set is the ideal rig for getting out to where the big snapper are. This powerful rig is one of the more popular family systems and is easily handled by 2 or more people, and they can be used just about anywhere. It was originally designed to overcome the high surf and strong currents encountered on the west coast. But because of its safety features and versatility, the dropper rig has become very popular on the east coast as well. With boating far more popular also on the east coast, keeping the main line supported out of the water becomes important on some beaches. One way of ensuring the safety of your gear is to limit the distance the gear is set to where the main line can be held clear of the water against the wind pressure and gravity forcing it down. In light winds, this could be as little as 400 metres, increasing to 700 to 900 metres in moderate to fresh winds. The ultimate solution where boats are active is to add a second, smaller kite further back on the main line to lift the main line up. This allows the gear to be set 1,000 metres or more offshore in most wind conditions, with no risk to your gear, regardless of boating activity. All dropper rigs are fundamentally the same. They consist of the main line, the kite line, and the drop line. But you can vary the actual fishing gear at the end. It's simply a matter of changing the terminal tackle to suit the conditions, the area, or the species that you're targeting. The 65 kg dropper rig is easily adapted to safely and productively fish over intermittent fowl. The reef leader section should be 1.5 times the depth of water you intend fishing. A sacrificial weight is attached at the bottom end by either a light safety trace or a rubber band. This weight should be light enough to enable it to run out in mid-water rather than bouncing along the bottom, only sinking when you decide it's the correct distance offshore. The The simplest way to attach the fishing traces to the reef dropper is to have swivels permanently attached to the 37 kg line using blood loops tied with the swivel in the knot. To tie this knot, we form a circle in the line and then twist the line round itself several times before poking the swivel through the gap in the middle, pulling it tight so the swivel finishes up hanging from a loop. We'll show you how to tie that knot again. But a better hookup rate will be achieved if the swivels can actually rotate freely around the main line and also run up and down between the stops. The stop can be either a crimp, or you can make a stop by tying a blood loop so there is actually no loop sticking out to snag the trace. This is called a blood stopper knot. If you've got a moustache, be careful when you're tying this one because you might get caught. First thing is to tie another blood loop, and then when you're pulling it tight, just try and ease the loop back into the knot with your teeth. That's a perfect stopper knot. If it has even the smallest loop sticking out, then do it again. Because the hook section hangs vertically, the traces need to be kept short and the stoppers close together so that as many hooks as possible are fishing close to the bottom. 400mm traces spaced 900mm apart are perfect. Like on the big dropper rig, it's critical that the hooks can't touch each other and become tangled. Snapper, half hooker or groper, and blue cod are generally taken close to the bottom, while John Dory, kingfish, kahawai and trevally can be caught anywhere in the water column. And you can target different species by using different baits, such as flasher rigs with baits on the hooks, soft tail lures, whole pilchards, or even small live baits for predators like kings and John Dory. Make sure when using any system fishing over a reef that you don't let the gear go out so far that it goes past the reef and onto the sand. 200 to 300 meters is plenty in most areas, and it's a good idea to check a chart if you don't know the area. The 65 kg deluxe dropper rig has 2 shock cords to which you attach different hook sections. This is made from multi-braided cord which is 2 to 3 times the breaking strain of the lines it is joining, and it won't become fatigued over time like regular monoline, which could not withstand the pressures exerted by the 3-way pull. There are 2 knots involved. First, we put a loop at the end of the shock cord. This involves a simple granny knot, and then put the end of the loop round inside itself 3 or 4 times and pull it tight. Pull it tight slowly, and if the coils aren't lying evenly, just roll it around in your fingers. Next, we put a loop in the middle of the shock cord, and we start this by using the same knot that we saw earlier, creating a blood loop. But this time, as the loop is pushed through itself, instead of pulling it tight at that stage, we actually plait it a couple of times to give it extra strength before pulling the loop out. This creates a much stronger loop. The next knot is used to join the shock cord to line between 45 and 67 kg breaking strain. First, we moisten the loop at the end of the shock cord, thread the line through, back, wind it round itself 6 times, back through the small loop, and then back through itself again. This locks the knot. When tightening it, pull on the tag end and both push and pull the knot slowly and steadily up. Just ease it down slowly till it's nice and tight and even. Then clip off the tag end. Now this knot is used to join extra heavy mono to the shock cord. It's for mono of 100 kg or more, and it's Paul's version of the uni knot. Starts out the same as the clinch knot, back up through itself, but we only wind it round itself 4 times and then wind it back round itself again. Only 4 times, so it's easy to pull tight. These knots have been well tested on kite systems over the last 10 years and will ensure the safety of your kites. There's even enough distance between the two shock cords to run two 10-hook sections at the same time without their becoming tangled. If the area is too foul and rocky for the reef dropper rig, or if a shallow reef has to be crossed before fishable water can be reached, the Castle Point killer rig is the one to use. The hook section on this rig is exactly the same as the reef dropper rig, and the benefits of this variation become apparent when it's being set or retrieved. All reef systems employ a sacrificial weight, but when selecting one for this rig, find a large, flat beach pebble. When setting the gear, this will skip across the surface, lifting the hooks over any rocks or weed. And in moderate to fresh winds, the baits can be completely out of the water, so the rig can be set over anything. When the desired distance is reached, the ratchet on the reel is locked, and this allows the weight and the baits to sink to the bottom. This is a great way to target big snapper that live in the reefs, like these ones up to 10 kilos or 24 pounds, all caught kite fishing. You actually want the weight to snag and break off, as this allows the kite to lift the fish up and over the reef as you pull them in. In fact, some anglers use barley sugar connections, so the weight will drop off after the barley sugar or lifesaver melts. Some kite fishermen on the Wairarapa coast have caught hapooka or groper on these specialised reef dropper systems. There are many other variations. You can stray line, unweighted or very lightly weighted hook sections. When the gear is moving out, the baits stay just below the surface, and when it stops, they sink slowly to the bottom. To ensure the bottle doesn't sink, use an oversized bottle filled with water. When stray lining, the hook section must not be any longer than the depth of water being fished. Unless there is really shallow foul right out to where you want to fish, it's a good idea to let the line travel for 30 to 40 metres at a time, allowing 5 minutes fishing time between stops. 2 hook sections with up to 5 hooks baited with huge baits can easily be fished on this rig, and a mesh burley bag or similar container attached to the bottle will help attract fish to your baits. These flasher rigs tied on a wasabi hook also catch fish on this rig, especially if a small bait is added to the hook. They also work well on the back trace on the sand dropper rigs, and so do these new soft tail rubber jigs, which have great action at slow speeds. Any combination of the previous rigs can be run simultaneously, allowing the kite fisher to cover different depths at the same time. If the correct tackle is used, the big game fish can be caught from the shore on kite-driven baits. Some people have hooked marlin on live baits fished under kites, but none has yet been landed in New Zealand. The biggest problem is having the line capacity to get a live bait out to the blue water and then being able to fight the fish in clear water without sharp rocks to cut the line. You can also troll skip baits under a kite, and the rig can handle dead or live baits up to 5 kilos on stand-up tackle right up to 37 kg while fishing up to 1 kilometre or more offshore. Different release systems can be used to separate the game line from the kite line. Either a release clip like this roller troller which separates the lines on the strike, or a barley sugar which melts after 10 minutes, setting a live bait adrift under a balloon. The barley sugar is set up like this with the 2 lines hitched around it. Other game fish can also be targeted with kite-assisted tackle, including tuna and the large sharks, like this white pointer caught on the west coast near Dargaville. While the 3-to-1 ratio reel is perfect for storing line on and for launching kites, it cannot be used as a winch. It's a line bank only. To retrieve the gear, we simply walk down to the water's edge, take 1 or 2 turns around arm or waist, and walk the line back in. Whoever has the job of winding the line back onto the reel should not have any tension on the line between the reel and the person hauling. The line should be slack on the beach. These reels make it easy for the winder to feed the line evenly onto the spool and wipe any excess sand off as the line runs through their fingers at the same time.
Now it's a 3-way join, and instead of unclipping it and pulling up the line and possibly getting a tangle, what we're going to do is pull the bottle directly towards us with the fish attached, and all the line will be stored up in the air, so there's no chance of it tangling. Yeah, while we're doing that,